Strange but true stories, tales from the light side, the dark side, and the other side. I'm Steve White. The call is coming from inside the house. That line doesn't have the terror that it once did prior to everybody having cell phones. Back when the movie When a Stranger Calls came out in 1979, those words would send shivers down the spines of anybody. But phone calls can still bring a certain amount of terror and confusion, especially when the person on the other end doesn't exist in this world any longer. As fantastic as it seems, the mystery of phone calls from the dead is not an uncommon one. Those who have researched the phenomenon have determined that these calls usually occur within the first 24 hours of the death. But there have been cases in which the calls were received as long as 2 years after. The call is usually filled with heavy static, and the phantom caller's voice is faint, as if far away. Far away, indeed. Following are some remarkable instances of phantom phone calls as told by the people who experience them. In some cases, it's the phantom who answers the phone. But in every case, the experience remains unexplained. Something strange indeed. I come from a really close family. I have 2 older brothers, and we are really close in age, so we have a lot in common, and their friends are my friends. My oldest brother, Jeremy, had a really good friend named Joe. Joe was always hanging around our house, and he had this big personality and a distinctive voice. You always knew when Joe was around. But Joe got sick, and his health went downhill fast. He died soon after he got sick, and we were all devastated. He was young and vibrant just a short time before, and now he was gone. Joe's death obviously affected Jeremy a lot. My brother Matt and I were also deeply saddened, and we just went through the motions of life for a while. A few weeks after Joe died, the phone rang, and Matt answered. Hello? After a few moments, the voice on the other end said,
"Hey, Matt, it's Joe. Is Jeremy home? Something really strange seems to be going on."
Matt freaked out. It didn't just sound like Joe. It was Joe. Matt couldn't really think of what to say, so he just said shakily, "No, he's not. I'm sorry." The phone line went dead, and Matt looked at the caller ID. It read, "Out of area." Yeah, no kidding. Matt thought that surely somebody was playing a sick joke. So he hit star 69, which he did back in the waning days of the landline, to find out the number of the last call and call that person back. He couldn't retrieve the number, and we were all left dumbfounded. None of us ever received another call from Joe. To this day, we really have no explanation. Matt is convinced it was Joe's distinctive voice, and it still unnerves him to think about that call. Say goodbye, Grandpa. My husband lost his grandfather a long time ago, but just recently he has been experiencing something really weird. He has seen his grandfather's name on our caller ID, so we thought someone was calling from his grandfather's house. After that first call, we called back immediately, but no one was home. Just today, for the second time, he was at work and clearly, along with coworkers, heard the phone ring. He answered it on the first ring, but only heard a dial tone. When he looked at the phone's directory, which has no caller ID but lists who he has called, he saw his grandfather's name again. What could this mean? How could it be happening? Money is useless here. One of my clients related this story to me a few years ago. At the time, she worked for the Department of Social Services, and one of the services she offered was to provide checks for emergency expenses. She had issued a check for $100 to one of her clients for utilities and was about to close the file when her phone rang. On the line was the woman to whom the check was issued. The woman sounded vague and distracted, but clearly said,
I won't be needing that $100 after all.
My client made a note of it and went on with her other work. That evening at home, she was reading the newspaper when she saw the obituary of the woman she had talked with on the phone that day. The woman had died the day before. Unmistakable mother's voice. 3 years ago, my mother passed away. We were very close, and I miss her daily. Last Christmas, I went to bed and woke up to the phone ringing. I answered it, and a voice that was very familiar to me said,
"Hello there."
It was my mother's voice. The line had a static noise, and the sound cut in and out. I said, "Mom? This can't be you, Mom. You're dead." She said,
"Oh, come on now."
She sounded a bit agitated, and then we were cut off. My 16-year-old daughter was sleeping in the next room and also heard the phone ring that night. I know it was my mother's voice. She has a Norwegian accent. It was her. Was it my brother? About 3 nights ago, my husband got a phone call about 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember it was a very stormy night. He answered and the phone was giving him little bleeps, but nobody was saying anything. Then the phone went dead. I was asleep by the phone, but I never heard it ring, and I always hear the phone ring. Only he heard it. He called the number back on the caller ID, and it said,
"We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time."
The number is still on our caller ID. That same night, around 4 in the morning, his mother, who lives about an hour away, also got a phone call. Her son, who was asleep in the house, also never heard the phone ring. She heard the same bleeps, and it was the same caller ID. She called it back.
"We're sorry, the number you have dialed..."
And it was also a number not in service any longer. About 5 that morning, his mother was lying in her bed, and she saw a man standing at the foot of her bed looking at her. She said he was tall and thin, had dark eyes and dark clothes. He stared at her for a minute, and then darted across the room and disappeared. We were all freaked out about this, and cannot figure out why this happened all on the same night, and nothing like this had happened before or since. Why was it I did not hear the phone ring, and yet my husband did? Sure, there's probably a logical explanation for why we all received a phone call that night, and for the technical malfunctions of the phone call. But one thing we kept thinking about was about my husband's brother, who had died tragically just 6 months prior. Was he trying to contact us? To let us know that he was okay? Or just to hear the voice of his loved ones one last time? Intercepted call. I just found out that one of my phone calls the other day was a dead lady. I was at my mom's house and I was calling a friend who lived nearby. She was at her cousin's house, so I looked up the number in the phone book. It was the only one by that name in the phone book, so I knew it was my friend's cousin's number. I called it, and it didn't even ring. But an old lady answered. She said,
"Hello?"
I asked, "Is Amelia there?" Amelia is my friend Jessica's cousin. The old lady said,
"No, dear. Amelia isn't here, sweetie. I should be expecting her any minute now."
So I thought nothing of it and hung up. I thought they left for a bit. I knew Amelia lived with her mom at her grandparents' house. What I didn't know is what I found out when I talked to Jessica. I told Jessica about it, and she said, "Amelia's grandma is dead." And we were there all day long. We were sitting right by the phone. It never rang. Who answered the phone? I was staying at a cottage in North Wales in 1997. The cottage was owned by my best friend's grandfather and was in a fairly isolated location, but not too far off the main road. It was very basic, but it had electricity and a boiler for hot water, although no central heating. It was a 3 double-bedroom property with no outhouses. There were 6 of us staying in this cottage one Easter weekend, and we spent much of our time lazing around and visiting local sites of interest. We decided one Saturday morning to go out to the local market and then stop at a pub on the way back. While sitting at the pub eating our lunch, other friends of ours who were staying in a nearby town entered the pub and sat at our table saying they were glad that we were still here and they hadn't missed us. When asked how on earth they knew where we were, they said they had phoned the cottage where we were staying, and the lady who answered the phone told them. There was no one else staying at the cottage. There was no cleaner or any other person tied to the cottage. I spent the remainder of our time there sleeping with the hall lights on, and haven't gone back since. Long distance plan. I have never been a believer in ghosts, but what happened to me, I can't help but reconsider my position. I'm a telephone sales representative, and at the time of this occurrence, I was marketing a phone service. Here is what happened to me at work. On Thursday, April 26th, I made a sales call to Pennsylvania. It started just like any other call.
Hi, I need to speak to Mr. or Mrs. B, please.
I'm Mrs. B.
And I continued on with a normal sales call. She seemed very interested and asked a lot of questions. But when I came to the decision-making part, she quickly stopped me.
Oh, I'm sorry, dear, but you're going to have to speak to my husband about this. I have tried to get him to switch so many times, but he won't listen to me. He is married to AT&T and simply refuses to make any changes.
She also quickly pointed out that since his retirement, he spent a great deal of time fishing and was not easy to get in touch with, and it would be best to try early in the morning before he left for his favorite hobby.
But listen, our phone bill has gone up recently because he is making so many calls to North Carolina. He may listen to you if you show him how beneficial it would be.
On that note, I decided that perhaps this was worth a callback and told her that I would call her husband the next day. The next day, I made that phone call, and I probably will never forget it. On the callback, the husband did answer the phone. I introduced myself in the normal fashion and explained that I had been talking to his wife the previous day, and she had suggested that I speak to him. You can imagine the shock and horror when he sadly said to me,
Sir, I don't know who you were talking to, but it wasn't my wife. She has been dead for nearly 2 weeks now, and I'm sorry, but I'm not in any mood to talk to anybody at this time.
With that, he quickly hung up the phone. This has been another strange but true stories. Have you ever experienced a call from the other side? Or maybe something that you can't quite explain? We would love to hear about it. Send us an email to strangebutTrueStories2@gmail.com. Your story may just end up on this channel. Let us know what you thought of these stories in the comments below, and subscribe if you haven't already. We appreciate those who have. I'm Steve White. Thanks for watching. Until next time.